Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. As the war in Ukraine grinds on, societal moods in Poland and across the region are shifting. Recent polls suggest that a growing number of Poles support an end to the war, even if it means territorial concessions. Meanwhile, Western leaders are softening their rhetoric, emphasizing negotiations over open-ended support. How does this reflect broader public sentiment, and what are the implications for Europe's security and Russia's hybrid warfare? Joining us today on TVP World is Professor Marek Wierzbicki from the John Paul II Catholic University of Lublin. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Good afternoon.
So we've been scouring through some polling numbers, and one of the alarming polls are showing that Polish people are, seeing diminishing support for the as long as it take rhetoric from a while back, and now a lot of them are saying that they might want to see the war end, even if it means territorial concession. Do you think that's the kind of general sentiment, the public mood that is kind of happening right now?
Yes, definitely, and it is well visible that the mood of the Polish society has changed for the last 2.5 years. We remember spring 2022, and a huge nationwide mobilization of the Poles to help Ukrainian refugees. It was amazing to take part in it. I personally participated in this action, and I remember that the percentage of those from among the Polish citizens who supported Ukrainians and the Ukrainian cause was about 90% even. But at present, of course, this support is much lower, and I think that about 55% of Poles are for an immediate peace talks, immediate peace treaty, even at the cost of the Ukrainian territory. So it is amazing, but there may be several reasons for that. For example, people can be tired of helping Ukrainians, of having them on the Polish land, and there were some conflicts, for example, over the Ukrainian grain that was to be transported in transit through Poland only, and then most of it stayed in Poland, was stored, and then sold for much cheaper price than the Polish grain. So these conflicts and some tiredness of the Poles may explain why the percentage of those who are for immediate peace treaty in Ukraine has grown up.
Do you think that the West and Poland, or probably NATO collectively, is showing their cards a little bit by making it relatively clear that the sentiment is changing a little bit? And when it comes to the softening of this rhetoric, do you think that these willingness to negotiate signals perhaps a weakening of the West's resolve? And could it be exploited by Russia?
Yes, of course. But first of all, we should bear in mind that Ukraine themselves, through its president, Volodymyr Zelensky, officially admitted that the position of the Ukrainian army is much more difficult than 2 years ago, and that they are quite exhausted by the warfare and all the kinds of costs of the warfare, human cost and economic cost and military cost as well. But it is also true that many Western leaders now point to the necessity of starting peace negotiations as soon as possible, and to end the war, no matter it will be a peace treaty or a ceasefire, but to stop the fightings and stop the warfare.
Right, and I think one of the big factors perhaps is also the electoral victory of the U.S. President Donald Trump, saying that, at least showcasing the fact that he might pull out some of the support, or at least not give as much of financial support to Ukraine as compared to the previous administration. Do you think that the possibility of decreased funding perhaps also have shaken the resolve of European leaders when it comes to the rhetoric of supporting Ukraine as long as it takes once the U.S. Treasury dries up?
Of course, the position and support of the United States of America for Ukraine is decisive as regards the warfare and the conditions of war. But we cannot say that Trump is going to conclude a peace treaty at any cost, even at the cost of the Ukraine's territory. But nobody knows. And the previous administration, Joe Biden's administration, on the one hand, supported Ukraine for quite a long time, but on the other hand, this support, this military supplies were not sufficient to bring about Ukrainians' victory. So Ukrainians, especially in autumn recently, were quite disappointed. Even President Zelensky said that this support from the USA or by the USA was not effective enough to secure Ukrainians' victory. So nobody knows what Donald Trump is going to do with Ukraine because it is only a part in his global game. But I'm sure that definitely he's not going to stop helping Ukraine without any peace treaty, lasting peace treaty, because he realizes that the victory of Russia would strengthen China in this global game.
Right. And I think a lot of people are also perhaps overlooking the fact that even if this chapter of the war closes, the possibility of hybrid warfare coming from Russia is still very real, especially with Ukraine perhaps being not as well occupying on the Russian consciousness. Do you think that this hybrid warfare might start to pose even more threats to the European countries as compared to the kinetic conflict that Ukraine is seeing right now?
Of course, this hybrid warfare is very dangerous for the European countries, not only for Ukraine, because Russians and Putin himself know very well that how important it is to influence European nations, citizens, influence their mentality, their views, way of thinking through some actions via the internet, for example, some manipulations or provocations. And this hybrid warfare, in my view, may be the introduction to a real classical war against Europe. And more Western military commanders especially, but some politicians as well, talk about the necessity to start preparing for the war against Russia seriously in the territory of Europe, which is quite new for the Europeans now, but which is quite real in my view.
Right. How effective do you think the Polish society in particular is in recognizing and countering some of Russia's attempts to destabilize the region through things like misinformation, propaganda, hybrid warfare, like cyber attack, like you mentioned?
You mean the Polish stance yes, towards this? Poland is quite cautious as regards Russia's hybrid warfare and reacts quite quickly and strongly, condemning any manifestations of this hybrid warfare. It is true, but sometimes it is not enough that Poland alarms the West, because the position of Poland is not as strong as we would like it to be. But definitely Poland, at least the Polish government, is still is trying to discover any Russian attempts to destabilize the situation in Poland and in East Central Europe especially. And many actions of the Polish government somehow make the Western leaders aware of a possible Russian hybrid warfare danger. And I think that the stance of the Polish government could be considered exemplary in that respect, but I'm not sure if other or most EU countries will follow suit.
Right, I think you brought up a very good point when it comes to Poland being very aware of the dangers that just looms beyond the border, being Russia's hybrid attack, and perhaps with a stronger position within the European Union, that message could be better relayed. When it comes to other parts of Europe, how sufficiently do you think they are prepared to maintain vigilance against Russian influence should the war actually kind of winds down?
I would like to start from Poland. Poland is preparing for war quite seriously, but only on the governmental and state level. But we need to prepare also on the society's level to recreate so-called civil defense, to organize the rear of the possible potential front. And of course, we should also prepare a young generation of Poles who are rather reluctant to fight against any invader on the Polish territory, which was shown in the recent opinion polls. But despite that fact, Poland is preparing, alongside Sweden or Finland, is preparing best in comparison with other EU countries. But in my view, the further to the east, to the west, sorry, the position, the awareness of citizens of EU countries becomes less to say it, less visible. You know, this awareness of a Russian danger, Russian hybrid warfare, in my view, is not so big, so visible in the countries such as Portugal, Austria, not mentioning Hungary, of course, and Slovakia. So that is why Poland should prepare for this war, but also should show the other EU countries how to do it, and that this danger is real.
Right. You mentioned something quite important there, that being the societal perspective. So my question would be, whether or not you've seen the change in this societal perspective during this whole war in Ukraine? Do you see people being more or less reluctant to be able to pick up a weapon and fight? Or what's your perspective on this?
Yes, first of all, the Polish society's mood regarding Ukrainians and their stay in Polish lands has changed considerably. And most Poles at the moment are against long-term Ukrainians' presence in the Polish territory, which is quite surprising because 2 years ago, about 70% of surveyed Poles claimed that the Ukrainians should stay in Poland for good or as long as possible, as necessary. But at present, as I said, there were some conflicts of interest, some tiredness or exhaustion of the Polish society. And at present, the Poles are not eager to support Ukrainians and to support their cause. And on the other hand, as I said, the level of society's preparation for a potential war against Russia is still too low in Poland. And in my view, when I observe the society in everyday life, very few people realize that we should be preparing as much as possible, as fast as possible, in terms of preparing the rear of the future front, as well as preparing people for survival of an ordeal that might come, and also to prepare the young generation, starting from childhood, and making our children stronger, more immune to the difficult experiences, more orientated in the area outside towns and cities. I am saying that I would like to say only that more than 50% of Polish children in schools do not take part in physical education classes. So it shows that they should be fitter and more resourceful for the future.
Right, perhaps it is high time that we develop some resilience. In the meantime, thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it. And thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. And thank you for watching this edition of World Talk. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.